Welcome, everyone, to the Club Express webinar on our new event module updates. This is a webinar we'll be talking about some upcoming changes to the events module. I will preface and say that several of these changes will be applied in about 2 weeks. We always get those questions when we do our update webinars is, when will this affect your website? So our current target is about 2 weeks from today. If you don't see those updates at that time, just keep in mind that the subject to change depending on testing and making sure everything's ironed out. Also, keep in mind as we demo things today, we are still kind of in progress, wrapping up some changes to things. So not everything you will see is perfectly set in stone, although most of it should be pretty much how it will look once we deploy these changes. There's also a couple topics that we'll talk about today that may or may not. Let's see. Are you able to, are you guys able to hear me? I just got a message that I'm not able to be heard. Oh, seems like I am being heard. Great. Okay. So I will continue then. So just keep in mind, there's a couple items that will be coming out later than the 2 week mark. So we've got some items we'll talk about today that are kind of in our pipeline for updates, but are not a part of the upcoming release. We just wanted to kind of let you know both what is coming imminently and what is kind of down the road in the pipeline, possibly later this year for events. Before we get started, let's go ahead and go over a little bit of housekeeping. So you'll notice all of your microphones are muted. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A chat. So you can, if you have comments or anything or have issues with the webinar, please feel free to use the chat. If you have questions about what you see, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the webinar. That is where we can get questions and comments about what's burning in your mind. All right. The recording of this webinar will also be on YouTube. We edit these videos and put them up usually a day or two after the webinar. So keep an eye on our YouTube channel. You can find that at clubexpress.com when you search on YouTube. That is with the dot spelled out. So that's ClubExpress, DOTCOM. And you can also find us under Club Express on most other social media platforms where we will also update you about changes to the platform. Finally, if you have comments about how Club Express has been doing, we'd love to get reviews. So if you go to clubexpress.com/reviews, you'll see some of our preferred review websites that you can leave comments about how Club Express is doing. All right. So if let's go ahead and get started. If you look at our little list here, we've got kind of four main points for our enhancements to the events module. We've got changes to the waitlist. Those items are still in production. So those are still in progress. So those will not be deployed in 2 weeks. But we will go over kind of what is going to update to the waitlist. Then we've got a few changes to the way the registration manager works for administrators. So there's a couple tweaks to the way administrators will interact with registrations. And then we've got a whole new process for registrations for users. When we talk about the way registrations are changing both for admins and users, keep in mind, and this is something that should put a lot of people at ease, the actual information being stored and the actual process is relatively unchanged. It's mostly kind of aesthetic changes. We're trying to make the registration process shorter for users. So things that used to take up multiple pages and you had to click next page, next page, next page, we're trying to shorten that and condense that as much as possible to make it a little bit easier, less barrier for entry for users. So we've got things like, condensing things down in pages. And then finally, we've got some general enhancements, just some kind of like quality of life adjustments that we'll go over that should make the events module a little bit easier to use. So let's go ahead and get into it. And let's talk about those kind of far-flung waitlist updates that are coming, and then we'll get into the stuff that you'll be seeing kind of imminently here in about 2 weeks. So changes to the waitlist that we have coming in the pipeline will be, we're going to start allowing members to see their position in line from their member profile. So those of you who have used the waitlist will be, once we deploy these, will be unchanged for the way it actually functions. When an event is full, it will switch over to the waitlist. People can add themselves to the waitlist, and then either the system can automatically or an admin can manually notify the people on the waitlist that spots are available for them to register. Once they do that, they're in the event. That whole process will remain the same. The biggest difference is when a member is a part of the waitlist, they can go to their member profile to their event history page. And from there, they will be able to see their position in line. So if they are the fifth person to join the waitlist, they will see that they are the fifth person in line. And if you're using that automatic waitlist button, or if you're using the manual option and you click, next person in line for the waitlist, it'll let them know like how many people are ahead of them in line for that waitlist. We will also have an extra option on the admin waitlist screen where admins can see when a waitlist user has been notified and if their time to register has expired. So those of you who have used the waitlist in the past, you'll know once someone gets notified, an email will go out to them and letting them know that a spot has opened up in the event for them. That will now be marked on the user's line in the waitlist section of the event management. So I'll kind of show you where that is in a minute. Again, these changes aren't available for us to demo yet. These are still in progress, but I'll kind of point out where that exists. Um, Also, we've added an option for members to register from the link in their email. That existed before, but what we're going to add is the option for when a member who has been notified that they can register, instead of clicking on that link, they can also just log into the website and the website will let them register for that event. Previously, when a person was a part of a wait list and they wanted to register for an event when a slot opened, the only way for them to do that was to click the link that was sent to them in an email. Now they should be able to just log in. So if they lose that email or miss it or something like that, they can just log in and it should let them register as normal. So again, these are changes that are in our pipeline. They are planned changes. We don't have them in place for us to demo yet. We just wanted to give you kind of a sneak preview of what we're working on. Let's go ahead and move forward to what we have kind of actively deployed for us to work with. So let's jump down to our next slide. We've made a handful of changes to the registration process for administrators. The first change is going to be that administrators can now search on any information about the person in the list. Previously, when you were searching in your registrations, you had to search by first or last name. We had a lot of requests, if a member primarily went by Doug instead of Douglas or Jack instead of John, things like that. If they searched for that nickname, they would not find the member that registered for the event. They can now search for a nickname. Also, for our professional organizations, a lot of people were asking for the option to search for company instead of name because they wanted to see, hey, show me all the registrants from, Google or something like that, whatever company that they happen to work for. You can now just search for the company that you're looking for, and anyone who is a member and is connected to that company or has listed that in their contact info as the company that they work for will also show up in those search results for event registrants. We've also added an option, and we'll talk about like kind of some aesthetic changes to events that are coming up. But there is an updated screen for you to access the mark attendance screen. And on that mark attendance screen, you are now able to sign the release agreement or waiver for that member when you are marking their attendance. So we'll be talking, especially for the user part of today's presentation. Most of these changes are not actually for administrators. Most of these changes are for the user registration process. And there's been several changes to the way users will sign off on a waiver for an event. If a user is not able to sign off on their waiver for an event, we actually have added an option. So when you are marking their attendance in person, you can just click a quick button and that attendance will be available for them to sign right there in person. There are two added options to the registration administration tools that will not be a part of the release in 2 weeks. So we've got the option for emergency contact info to be available straight from the registration screen. That's another thing that we are working on adding and is in our kind of like by the end of the year ballpark timeline. And so that is something that we're looking forward to seeing. And then once again, another waitlist item similar to that option to have people join the waiver. We will soon be able to see people who are on the waitlist and move over to the waitlist from that mark attendance screen. So that's another item that would be a part of the admin's interaction with registrants. And we can jump from the mark attendance screen to the waitlist. So if someone from the waitlist shows up and you want to mark them as attended, you can just mark them straight from there without having to go through the entire registration process. We'll have more more details on that as we finish producing that tool, but those are two more things in our registration administration tools that will be kind of coming down the line. All right, so let's get to what I think will be the kind of large part about today's webinar is going to be the registration process for users. Everything I just talked about, seeing the user registration info and seeing the mark attendance screen, being able to sign waivers, that's all going to tie in here. So I am going to switch to a demo here, but I'm going to go over the next slide first so that I can tie this all together. So in our next slide, we're going to talk about some of the big changes to the registration process for users. The main screen for our event. So our event details screen is going to be aesthetically significantly different. All of the same information will be there. It's just presented in what I would say is a more aesthetically pleasing kind of manner. It's a little bit more modern, a little bit updated, so it's a little bit cleaner. But now that first page, when you log in and look at an event, that first page is going to look a little bit different. We have some updated icons, some updated organization of information, and also that actual first page is now also the first page of the registration process. So we've kind of streamlined the process. So when you click on that register now button, it's actually going to take you to the bottom of the page and you can start selecting the members who are going to be attending that event, or users if they're non-members. Who are attending that event. You can also, on that first screen, choose who is attending. So you can say, hey, we're having a member attend and that member is going to bring guests. You can select all of that on that same details page. You can also go down to, if we look at the questions option, so those of you who have used events and your events have additional questions. Previously, when you're registering, every registrant for an event, so everyone who signs up for an event has their own page in that registration process. So they would say, my t-shirt size is small and I'm allergic to shellfish, so I can't have shellfish, at this event. And you would click next screen, you would answer those questions for the next user, and so on and so forth. You would do that over and over for each registrant. Now that is all a single page. So all of those questions are going to appear on a single page. It will make registering for events a little bit quicker. And it'll also make the questions make a little bit more sense because we're not having to click next page and then see the same questions again. Our waivers. So I mentioned this in our previous slide a little bit. Our release agreements are waivers. So if you ever have an event where you say, hey, we'll be taking pictures and we need you to agree to appear in our pictures, or you release our organization from safety concerns, that's something we see a lot of in our physical sporting clubs. If you have some sort of release agreement for part of your event, we have updated the waiver process so now it can be signed for each individual. Previously, in our old event style, when a primary registrant, when the person actually filling out the registration signed up, if they were bringing guests, they would check off that they were signing the waiver for themselves, and it would also check off for everyone that they were bringing with them. Legally, that was a bit of a catch-all, and we were trying to avoid doing that. So what we've done now is when you get to that waiver screen as a member, you will have the option to sign it for yourself, and you can choose not to sign it for other people. If you have any other registrants in person with you, you can have them sign it themselves on the spot, or if you are bringing any minors with you, so someone under the age of 18, you can sign that release agreement for them if you are their guardian. But otherwise, the intent is for you to leave those waivers unsigned. And then when you arrive to the event, an administrator at the event can kind of check off on their attendance, check their waiver status, and actually have them sign that waiver in person instead. So that is another way for us to kind of clarify that waiver information. The next thing that's going to be significantly different for the registration process for members is going to be the way we treat activities. So if you have a multiple activity event, those of you who have hosted conferences using ClubExpress, and you have things like panels of speakers and different events where you have one large event, maybe say over the course of a weekend, and you have 3 or 4 different activities that people can sign up for, we've updated the way those work. So now when you register for activities, all of your users will select their activities on the same page. Just like with our questions, previously that used to be a multi-page process. So if you had both questions and activities for say 3 attendees, that would be a total of 6+ pages that you had to fill in of information. We've condensed that down to 2 pages, so it should be much faster for users to register without having to go page to page to page. Additionally, we now have notified, this is something people have been asking for a long time, but there's an option when you have multiple activities. If those two activities that people are selecting overlap, they will now see a notice that says these two activities overlap, letting you choose between signing up for an activity that takes place at the same time as another. So if you're signing up for two, panels of speakers and they take place at the same time, you would see that they overlap, and it might help you not accidentally sign up for, two activities when you can only attend one. So now I'm going to go ahead and swap over to our demo, and I'm going to walk through the registration process, first as a member, and then I'll give us a quick preview of what it looks like for a non-member, and then I will switch over to the like admin profile and walk through kind of the differences from the admin's point of view. So give me just a moment to swap over my screen share. All right, so I'm logged in. I am currently not logged in as an administrator. I'm logged in as myself on our demo website, and I have no administrative privileges whatsoever. If we head over to our calendar, we'll see I would like to sign up for the 2024 conference that's taking place this weekend. It's a 3-day conference that will have activities in it. When I click on this conference option, we're going to see the updated details page. So you'll notice right off the bat that this is going to look a little bit different. The old style view where it was broken vertically with a little bar over here on the right-hand side, that has been updated and removed. Now we just have in the upper right-hand corner the option to add this event to my calendar. So we've updated the icons that show up here as well. You'll also see more updated icons when we look at this as an administrator. And then we'll see the register now button. But before I click on the register now button to start that process, I do want to kind of look over here on the left-hand side. We'll see some basic info. When is this event and where is it? So if we have that information filled in, that will show up. And then we will see our formatted description. I've simply just put a picture in here just as a placeholder. And then we'll see the rest of our events information. We'll see, who are our event contacts, the category of the event, is there spots open? There's currently 9 spots left. And then we'll actually see on this screen number of people who will attend. So this is the first part of my registration process where I can go ahead and say, I will be purchasing a member ticket. I will be bringing, a couple guests if I want to bring guests. And you'll actually see that the member ticket has this little asterisk next to it. And we can see that there's a little tooltip letting us know that that is a primary registrant type and we can only select one. So this person, this ticket, if we are not a guest here, this is who I am, and then any guest options will be additional people that we bring with us. If you don't allow for guests to be brought, then it would just be a simple single option that we would see here, and that would be a little bit simpler for people to register. And then as before, this is relatively unchanged. We have all of our full activity details that we'll see below this. So we've got things like our required activity and then our speaker panels and then maybe a charity raffle. And we can click to drop down those and see the details. These sections are mostly unchanged from events as they were before. If we scroll back to the top before I hit enter here, previously when we hit register now right here, it would take us to our first page of registration. It would take us to a new page. With the updated events, it's actually just going to scroll us down automatically down to the section where we can select who is attending. So anytime I click that register button, it will just take me back down to this new register section where we can go ahead and fill in our registration. I can say, I am going to bring myself. So I am registering for this event. I will be getting myself a member ticket. And then I'm going to bring some guests. I can say I'm going to bring, let's say 2 additional guests. So I'll bring myself and then a friend and maybe a spouse. Once I say register now, it will take me to a screen to confirm the information about the event and who is attending. So there's my name and then my guest information. I am given the opportunity, if I've added accidentally too many guests, I can actually remove them from this screen. So I can say, okay, I'm giving myself a little summary about who I'm bringing. If I only wanted, say, one guest, I can remove guest number 2 here and then proceed with my registration. I do want both guests, so I won't remove them. And I will say next. Then we will see an option where we can fill in the information about the people in our registration. In our previous events model, we can come in here and we can fill in the information about who is attending the event. So we can say, I will say this is a test person. And we can come down here to say, This is test person two. And these are the guests that I'm bringing. And these are not member guests. These are non-member guests. So I do need to fill in their information. If they were member guests, say a part of my membership, it would give me an option to select them from the membership roster. So I could say I'm bringing, maybe another Club Express employee as a member, and they're already members of the organization. But because these are non-member guests, I get the opportunity to fill in their information. Then I can proceed to the next page. And this is the first page where things will become significantly different from event registration as it was before. Um, we will see the activities screen, and these are the activities that are available for us to register for. Um, we've got this option for a required activity that is $10. And you'll see that over on the right-hand side, it is selected to one, and I cannot reduce or increase the number of that. It is configured to be required. The configuration process behind the scenes is unchanged. I can just choose to register for the other activities that are available to me. So if we look over on the other activities, we've got the options for our different speaker panels. And I can say, I want to register for speaker panel one. And you'll see this is where one of our big changes has taken place. This activity overlaps with another selected activity. So because I selected speaker panel one and speaker panel two takes place in an overlapping time, we get this little alert letting us know that this overlaps with a selected activity. If I deselect speaker panel one, then none of them are overlapping, and so I can continue on. I can choose to attend both. So even though they do overlap, I can select both of these. And even though they overlap, I can still register for them. So we're not stopping people from signing up for two things. We're just letting them know that that is what they are doing. Speaker panel 3 does not overlap with speaker panel 1 or 2, so I am welcome to add or remove that, and it does not create or remove any of these overlaps. And then similarly, these are raffle tickets. Someone pointed out, and I just noticed I misspelled raffle. That was my typing, not a system name, so don't worry about that. That's just, if you know how to spell better than I do, then it won't be a problem. But this is where I can come and I can add raffle tickets, and I can say I want, 5 raffle tickets. And all of this activity registration is, though it has been somewhat like aesthetically changed, we've kind of given it a bit of a facelift. The actual function here is the same as it was before. The only functional changes here are that we now have this activity overlap alert. And another big change is that you'll notice when I scroll down, previously I would fill in my own activities for myself, and then I would have to click next page to fill in my activities for my next person. And then I would click next page again for my next person. Now it's all on one page. So we have simplified this process and we've made it one page so that you're not having to load page after page after page. It's all one single page. So I know that I want 5 raffle tickets and I want to go to speaker panel 1 and 2. I know that my, say my spouse, this test person, doesn't want any raffle tickets. They want to go to speaker panel 3. And then test person 2, they do want 2 raffle tickets and they want to go to all 3 of the speaker panels. So I can go ahead and select what activities for each person that is attending. If I'm bringing 10 guests, then I would get options to fill in for all 10 guests. If I'm bringing just one, I would see however many guests I'm bringing would each get their own little section where we can fill in what activities they want to attend. So when we go to the next page after we've selected our activities, we will now get taken to the questions page. So once we've selected our activities, we will get the opportunity to fill in questions. Again, the actual configuration of the events is unchanged. So the same way that you were previously adding questions to events, that still all applies. There's been no change to the configuration of the actual event itself. That screen is exactly the same. It's just how that information is presented. So when we come down here, we'll look at the new events option. Previously, our registration questions, so these are questions that are asked for the entire group attending. So only once per registration is this question asked. That used to be its own page. And then the registrant questions, so these are questions that are asked once for each person attending. These questions used to be asked for each person, and then that would be their own page, and we would move on to the next questions. And then similarly, if we go all the way down to the bottom, there were questions for the activities, and those were also their own page. So you could see how very quickly, if you had activities and questions, you could build up a dozen pages that you had to click through in order to finish your event registration. Now all of the questions are presented on one screen. So first we would get our registration questions, and I would answer this. This is just a simple yes no question that was built ahead of time. And then we would get our registrant questions, and we will be told this is a question for Devin. This text is bold because I made it that way. You can make the font match the font above if you would like. But this is going to say, does Devin have any dietary restrictions? And I'll say, sure, I have a nut allergy. I don't have a nut allergy. But then we can move on to the questions for our test person. So if this is my spouse, I could say, no, my spouse doesn't have any dietary restrictions. And then for, say, my cousin who's also coming, this is my third guest. I can say, this person does have a shellfish allergy, and I can fill in the questions for each of them for this event. And then finally, we get presented with questions for the activities that we signed up for. So because each of us signed up for the required activity, we are all asked for our shirt size. So I just added that question. If you show up for this event, you're going to get a complimentary t-shirt. And we can say, hey, Devin wears a large, and our test person, my spouse, wears a medium, and let's say my cousin wears an extra large. And so we can fill in our t-shirt sizes, and that is a part of that activity. So again, people who use questions for things like, added merchandise, if you're asking for shirt sizes or hat sizes for things that you're handing out at your event, if people sign up for that, you can have them answer those questions. Previously, all of these were on different screens. The way the questions work, the way the information is presented, the reports you can run, those are all the same as they were before. It's the only change here is that we've condensed it into one screen instead of having it be, 4, 5, or 6 different screens that you had to click through. So it's just one time we have to click next screen. So the next screen that we're going to see is our agreement and waiver screen. So we've got a very simple, don't do anything dangerous. We love to take photos. You might be on our website. This is a very short version. A lot of clubs will have, their board will come up with a kind of boilerplate agreement that they have to sign to attend an event. This is another big change for our event as they previously were. Before, if you had any agreement or waiver, this page would simply be a checkbox, and you would check it off and it would say, I agree for myself and my guests that we agree to this waiver. That was a bit of a problem because someone could be bringing a guest, say their neighbor, and if the neighbor isn't there to agree to the waiver and read it, that neighbor never knew that they were signing off on that waiver. So now we give you the option for each person attending. So we can see sign agreement for Devin. I am only required to sign for myself. So you'll see we get this little red dot. This is the red dot that you'll see all over ClubExpress letting you know you have to do this one. I cannot click next. If I try to click next, it won't let me proceed. I have to fill it in for Devin. But the other people, so say my spouse and my neighbor, these people are optional. I don't have to fill it in. So when I click the pencil here, it will let me sign the agreement. And this is another change we've made to the agreement and waiver screen. When we click on it, it's going to pop up this little box and it will say, I agree to the terms of this waiver. It will give you a little note that if you're under 18, you should have a guardian sign. But we can agree to the waiver, we can agree to the terms, and it'll also give us a sign box. This is something a lot of organizations were asking for. They were saying, a simple checkoff that I agree was not quite enough. They needed, if this was going to be a legally binding waiver that they wanted to show in the event that anything happened, they wanted a signature. And you can use, if you have a touch screen, you can use your finger or a stylus, or if you're just doing this on a computer, you can poorly write your name like I'm about to. So I'm going to say, Devin. This is hard on a computer, but for most organizations, just a simple name that you're going to sign here is going to be plenty. So you have the ability to sign your agreement, and then you'll see once you save, it locks in that agreement, and you can click the little eyeball to review your signature. And we can see below here, we can repeat that process for the other two. When a primary person is registering, it does give them the option to sign. And the intention for this is that if I am registering and bringing guests, if my wife is in the other room, I can say, hey, come sign this agreement. And she can come in here and she can click this herself and she can sign it herself. So we can have other people sign this. Also, if someone is coming and they're bringing their children, if they are, the children's guardian, they can sign this for their children. Or if they have their friend around, they can have that friend come in and say, hey, I'm going to sign it. But let's say, I will have my spouse come in and sign this herself. Um, but for this agreement for this test person, if this is my neighbor or my cousin, I'm going to say, I'm going to save that for later. I'm not going to fill this out for that person. And then I can say next. I can actually just leave it unsigned. And I'll show you a couple ways that we can collect that signature here later on once they arrive to the event. So that's the end of the registration process. We will get this kind of summary screen where we can see here's all the details and all the answers to the questions that we filled out, and we can say, hey, I want to complete my registration. My total fee is $47. All of those fee structures and everything is completely unchanged. The payment screen is unchanged. I will not pay because again, these this is not production, so I cannot actually submit that payment. But that is the registration process. From that point on, it's all the same. They'll get the same confirmation emails. They'll get the same reminder emails. All the behind the scenes event configuration is almost completely unchanged. So that is the new process for a member registering for an event. Keep in mind, again, if you're having an event and you want that process even simpler, if you don't ask questions, if you don't require a waiver, if you don't require activities, all of those things reduce the time for people to sign up. But this is about as short as we can make the um, the event registration process and still be able to collect all of that information. So now let's talk about what this looks like from the administrative point of view. If I go in and I log in as an administrator, so I'll swap my user to Martin Smith. This is our kind of catch-all administrator for our test websites. When we head over to the calendar as an administrator, you'll notice a couple different things. There's extra buttons here. So we've still got that add to calendar button, but we've got the option to click in and see all of the different registrants for this event. So we can come in and we can look at our registrants. This is relatively the same to as it was before. We've also got the option to click into our mark attendance screen. So this is one that I want to point out. When we're looking at an event and marking our attendance, if the event requires a waiver, we can actually click in and see we've got, Janet here who registered for this event. And when Janet arrives, we can have Janet sign the waiver for our event. So previously, this page was just for marking attendance, and this is a page that administrators would go to mark their attendance. Again, that is this little check icon right here. It used to be a blue button that would say mark attendance. Now it is this little person with a checkbox, and we can go to whichever activities we want to mark attendance for. And this is just someone that was previously registered for this event, but has not yet signed the waiver. So if this person was brought as a guest or registered as an administrator, we can come in here and say, hey, Janet showed up, but we need her to sign the waiver. And we can hand a tablet or a laptop or whatever we want to have Janet sign on and have Janet agree herself. And Janet can, fill in her signature and save. And so now we've collected her waiver, and then we can mark her as attended, and we can see that Janet has been marked as attending that event. And we also collected her waiver. So that is, if you ever have people that are registered for an event without having signed their waiver, then I would recommend you turn on the track attendance option, and that is how you can go ahead and quickly grab their waiver from them. If you are having an event and you don't want to track attendance, there is one more way that you can receive a waiver, and that is the quick release option. Again, you'll find that in your policy page. There's an option to turn on the quick release. That's something that ClubExpress has had for a while, but it's a similar process. We would just click sign release agreement. We can have that person fill in their name, first name, last name, email address. They can agree to the terms of our waiver. They can click and sign. So it's roughly the same process. There's just two different ways to tie it in. Keep in mind that the quick release option does not tie it to a registered person for the event. So it's still fine for collecting information. So if you're not tracking attendance or requiring registration, you can use that quick release option. But that has already been in existence. It is a new option to allow people to sign the waiver from the activity screen or from the attendance screen. Apologies. So there's been a couple other general enhancements that we've made that are just quality of life enhancements for the events module. So the first thing is when you're looking at the events calendar, we've added some text tags to events that are full and or waitlisted. So when we are looking at our events, you'll see we've got an event over here on the 17th. This event has reached its capacity. So the settings for our events are the same, and you can set a capacity for your event. So if your event can only allow up to 10 people, once you reach 10 people registered for an event, you will see the name of your event, but now people will see the tag full, letting them know they can still click in and see the details about this event, but they will see that the capacity of the event is full. So this will stop people from, getting excited from an event that they see on the calendar and then getting really disappointed when they click on it and see that it's full. So this lets them know ahead of time this is full. Similarly, if you have an event with capacity, but your event does allow people to add themselves to a wait list, there is also a tag called waitlist. So when you have an event, if that event becomes full, but people are allowed to add themselves to the waitlist, it will now say the name of the event and then waitlist. So if you've turned that waitlist option on, they will see, example event waitlist, and they can click onto this page and they can say, oh, the event is full, but there is a waitlist available. And they can click that simple button that says add me to waitlist, and they can put in their information and say, add me to the waitlist. One more update that has taken place. So previously, when you clicked the add to calendar button, it will download a file. And that is an ICS file. So if you are using say Google Calendar or Outlook Calendar and you download that option, previously would only put it on your calendar for the day of the event. So September 13th in this example. This event runs all the way through the 15th and it would still only add it to the 13th. When we deploy these updates, when you click that ICS file, it will download a new file that will span your calendar for the full time of the event. So if you add it to say your Google Calendar, it would show up on all days of your calendar instead of just the first day of the event. So we fixed that. Now it spans the entire timeline. And then the last change is that we have added an option for you to jump straight to the event details page from the admin controls. So if we go to our control panel and click on website and events, previously, if you wanted to get to the front end of an event from this page, the only options were either to click on the calendar on your menu and go click on that event, or to click on the pencil for the event and then click on back to event to get to the front page of that event. So we've added an extra icon to the events management page, and that is the all too familiar eyeball icon. So now when we want to go look at our 2024 conference, we can click the eyeball icon and that will take us straight to our event details page. So this will take us to our details and we can go ahead and look at how it appears to the public. So this is just a quicker way for admins to get to that view all screen. I think that is all of the updates that we have. I know not all of them are able to be demoed just yet. That's just because there are still a lot of work going on behind the scenes. So keep in mind, all of this is, still in progress. I saw a lot of people asking in the chat when this would be deployed. We are planning for this to all be out sometime in the next 2 weeks. So we're looking about 2 weeks from today. So you'll see these changes. There should be a notice in your control panel. So if you're familiar with ClubExpress and you're an admin, you'll know this show notices section. Right now, there's no new notices. But when you log into your website, you'll see that this will automatically open up. So we should add a note there once those changes are deployed. So you'll see that the new events updates have been deployed. So we will have a notice about that. So again, keep an eye out for it. We're looking at about 2 weeks. We'll send a notice to the control panel so you can see it. Um, yeah. Sam, do we have any questions about these changes? Let's see, Sam, are you muted?
Yes, we have tons of questions, and I think that it might be best to start with a couple that you might be able to show us live. Can you show us what member attendance screens will look like with the with information on whether or not the registrant has signed a waiver? Do you have any event built like that?
I think I do. Let's take a look at the calendar. So this event should have someone that has not. Yes. So this is what it looks like when someone has not signed the waiver. So again, to get here, I just went to an event as an admin, and you can click onto the track attendance option. And when we're on this track attendance page, we can say there's all of our people who are registered but are not tracked as attending. And we can see here, our first step would be to notice that we still have our sign waiver option here. They can agree to those terms. And I can say, I can pretend to be Betsy in this scenario, and I can, fill out my signature and save. And once I've saved my waiver, it switches from sign waiver to view waiver. So if someone has signed their waiver, we can just say view, and it just shows us the signature that they submitted. So we can see that they have signed the waiver. And so they have both signed the waiver and they're here in person, and then we can mark their attendance, and we will see that they are now marked as attending, and it will drop them off the list to be entered.
And one more thing that I wanted to just double check. When you are selecting activities in a multiple activity event, do you get notified via the warning when you select an overlapping activity, or when you select two overlapping activities, or will you get a notice if even one of the activities that you've selected happens to happen at the time of another activity, even if you haven't selected it?
So you will get, as soon as you select an activity that takes place at the same time as another. So in this
Okay.
example, speaker panel 1 here and speaker panel 2 have been configured to take place at the same time. So if I select speaker panel 1, what will happen is speaker panel 2 will get a notice letting us know that it overlaps. So when I click speaker panel 1, we can see speaker panel 2 here gets the notice that it overlaps with a selected activity. So I still haven't selected speaker panel 2. It just gives me the option to select or deselect it. It lets me know that it overlaps. When I select speaker panel 2, it's going to give me the notice for speaker panel 1 because speaker panel 2 overlaps with that one. So I click this one, it pops up here. And then, vice versa, as I add these, it will let me know that this activity overlaps with another activity.
And a couple of other questions that I'll just reiterate for everyone. Devin had mentioned we're expecting these changes to be available within a couple of weeks. Many people are asking, how can I get notified ahead of time so that I can let my members know that these changes are going to be coming up and they might notice a slightly different registration screen? We will be releasing a notice in your control panel notices. In our last version announcement, we let you know that all of our future version announcements are going to come through notices from ClubExpress. Anyone who has access to your control panel will see those notices. You can also view, Devin opened and collapsed the notices. And even if you don't see a notice, you can always view previous notices to see maybe if you missed it. But we highly recommend that you check out that notices section a little more often. We are using it to note any time that we are pushing out enhancements or updates.
I'll jump in and say it is important to note if there are no notices, it will just be the green show notices option. But when we add a new notice, it will open automatically for you. So you don't have to come in here and click show notices to see it. When we put up a new notice, it will default to open. And then once you hide that notice, it won't open for you again. So if you don't like seeing that notice, you can just hit hide notice and you shouldn't see it anymore. But when we put out that notice that the updates are being deployed, it should just pop open automatically for you when you look at the control panel around that time. Also, we're pretty firm on the timeline of about 2 weeks. We could, say give or take a couple days, but we have, our developers are pretty confident in that timeline of 2 weeks. So I would say, I think we're looking to deploy, I believe, on either Tuesday or Wednesday. So it'd be the 24th or 25th of September. So I would say, Friday the 20th or Monday the 23rd would be a good time to send an email out to your members letting them know things are changing. Hey, in the next couple days, things will change. So if you're looking for, that kind of information, or just keep an eye out on your control panel, the 23rd, 24th, 25th for that notice. I saw some comments. Will this enhancement be on the app as well? Yes. So the registration process will be the same for mobile users. So the mobile experience is pretty much the same as the mobile app experience. So once these changes are deployed, it should be reflected in the process. Obviously, things will look very slightly different on a mobile device than they will on a desktop computer or a laptop computer. Either way. The same is true of like a tablet. So your screen size will change the way things look a little bit, but the actual workflow of registering for an event will also change for mobile devices. I did see some questions about changes to RSVP or quick events. Not right now. That is something that is on our wish list. I don't have any solid information about when changes to RSVP or quick events will be coming, but this release does not have any changes to quick events or RSVPs.
Couple of notes about some questions about why certain things are the way they are, why certain things weren't added. Why are we requiring signatures on the waivers? It's more in line with what is legally accepted as far as a waiver. So that's something that we have added in for many clubs and associations that were actually asking for us to be a little more in line with things that are generally required of waivers. And if the event that you're hosting doesn't require a waiver, you don't have to include that option within your event. A lot of people got a little bit hung up on some of the things that Devin was showing. All of the questions that he's created, all of the activity types, item types, all of that is customizable. You choose what you're adding. We don't have a bank of questions that we create that are standard questions. You create those questions. If you're not using a waiver or a cancellation policy, don't include that form or don't include that page within your event. You can remove those items from all of the events that you're creating. It's not something that you have to include. And someone else was wondering, as far as sharing, why we aren't able to share to Facebook group, why we aren't able to share links to Facebook groups anymore. I believe that it requires a sign-in that we aren't able to bypass with our share link option. If that's right, Devin, if you want to correct me.
Yeah, so anytime we are sharing social media information, it has to be the option to just send it to that social media platform. So if it requires authentication in order to get from point A to point B, obviously we aren't literally you, so we can't have your login information for Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, so on and so forth. Some platforms will let it just receive and then you can do the logging in, but I think Facebook groups requires the content that is being shared to it to be essentially intertwined. So you have to kind of like have that like a Google login, and it's just not something that we are capable of doing right now. Um, Subject to change, but I think for the time being and for the foreseeable future, it's going to be that way. Someone asked, is there an event report that shows waiver signatures? Yes. Um, so the reports and the exports are unchanged. Again, I mentioned this at the top, but all of the actual content is unchanged. So the information being collected, the like configuration behind the scenes is unchanged. So there's our quick release option that is going to show you all of your quick release signatures. And then your waiver signatures, there's a report in here. There's a lot of reports, so I'm not sure if I'll find it right off the bat, but there is a report that has event information with waiver signatures. There it is, event registrations with waiver date. So that will show you who has and has not signed the waiver for their registration. So that's that report for that. Again, if they use the quick release option, so if they sign in person without the track attendance option, they would be using the quick release. And so they might show up there. So you might have to, if you have people signed in two different ways, you might have to run two reports to see everyone. Um, yeah. You can also go and look at quick releases over on the right hand. There's a little button over here that says quick releases. So if you're collecting quick release signatures, those will be over on this page.
Couple of other things. Um, Someone asking if we said it would be easier to see emergency contact data. The answer is yes. That's something that'll appear within the release. So you'll be able to see emergency contact data from the registration screen. And another question, the control panel. So your control panel may say calendar as opposed to events. The title of it may be changed based on something that your administrator may have done. You can change the name of any of the modules so that it appears on your menu in a way that is more useful for your members. It may say events, it may say calendar, it may say things we're doing. It can say anything that you'd like.
Yes, yeah, upcoming events, whatever you want to title it, that's under menu controls. We have some tutorial videos about that, but if you wanted to change the names of what's on your calendar, that is over here. So if we wanted to say the name of the module is events, the menu name is calendar. If we wanted to change either of those, we can go to our little configure button in the control panel. So I'm control panel website. I want to make sure I'm on the tab for the thing that I want to change. So I want to change events. And if I click configure, I'll see all the different modules that are available to me, and I'm looking for events. It'll be alphabetical. And I can see here the function name is events. So that's what shows up in the calendar and in the module. But the menu text is calendar. So if I wanted to change that to, what's up, what we're doing, I can change that. And then the calendar has changed to what we're doing. And when I click on it, it'll still say events because that's the function name, but the menu text has been changed to what we're doing.
Is there a way for an admin or coordinator to see who's paid or not paid? Yes.
Mhm.
Administrators and coordinators can still see registration and payment information. We aren't able to show the registration screen example that includes emergency contact info. That's not quite available just yet, but it will be included in the release. And you'll be able to see that emergency contact info in the same spot that you can see that member or that registrant contact info. So when you click on their name, you'll be able to see all of their info. And one question, does the no time zone option remain unchanged? I'm not quite sure what you
Yes.
would, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it does. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all of the again, I'll say this as much as we need to, but this screen, this backend screen, and how you make your events, all of this is unchanged, and the type of information your members put in is unchanged. The significant changes all have to do with the kind of aesthetic layout of how members put their information in. I would say the one functional change is that waiver signature now that we require an actual signature. But in terms of like what your events can do, how you create them, all of those things, that is all still the same. So all of these basic info, all of these pages are almost exactly, I mean, there might be a wording tweak here and there, but in terms of, your registration types that are available, your timing, multi-day, all of that stuff is still exactly the same. And the way you make your questions, activities, the way you write your policies, all of that is the same. It's just a change in how we collect information from members in an attempt to both, as for the waiver, make it more legally accurate, and to also, in terms of everything else, make it more streamlined so that it's, anything that could be kept to one page is, and anything that could be, simplified is, but while still collecting, all of the information that we know a lot of our organizations like to collect. And to Sam's point, one more time, this is a large conference style event. It's a 3-day event with a lot of activities and a lot of questions. You can absolutely make your events as simple as you want. If we go back to one of these other events that I made. These are just super kind of boilerplate events. I know it's currently full, but if I empty the event and if I remove the waitlist, oh, it's good. There's no one on the waitlist, so that's great. So this event is available, and you'll see there's fewer tabs here because in my basic info, I didn't add any of the extra tabs. It's just a basic event with registration. If we go back and look at this event, we'll see the details are a lot simpler. This is our version 2. They're a lot simpler, and I can come down here and I can say who will register. I'm, no fee, just someone. I will sign myself up, and that's it. So there's no extra screens, no questions, no waivers, no, I didn't turn any of those options on. So you're still able to have a essentially 3-click registration. Um, and I'm done and I'm registered. And you can see I'm currently registered. I'll see that little button right there. Um, and now that I've signed up, this event has a capacity of 1, so the event is now full. But you can see that event registration took me what, 5 seconds. It's a lot easier to register straight from this screen, and you can still make your events as simple or as complex as you want. So um, I've kind of that's the other end of the spectrum of how complicated events can be. You can also still make them incredibly simple.
Couple of questions I will answer live fairly quickly. Many of you had amazing suggestions, not just for some of the changes that you've seen today. Many of you had little tweaks that you pointed out that certainly our team has not thought of. And you also may have had suggestions for things that are outside of the purview of this release. We highly, highly encourage you to send all of those to ideas@clubexpress.com. No idea is too big. No idea is too small. We read them all. Our team uses those to determine what the next items are that our dev team is working on. So, a lot of you had really amazing suggestions about little things that can be changed within the calendar that would make your life easier and your members' lives easier. So, we really want you to send those to ideas@clubexpress.com. And many are asking when this new version of events is deployed, how will it affect any previously created events? All of your previously created events will now use this new interface. So none of the details about the event are changing. The event is there, your registrants are there, the reports are the same. The only thing that's changing is the interface. So all of the data is going to remain the same. A couple more questions about the signature required on waivers. Yes, that is mandatory. You cannot uh, say that you only want a checkbox versus a signature. Again, having the actual signature reduces liability for clubs. It is something that brings us more in line with what's legally required of waivers. That isn't something that can be turned off. Um, and another question about clicking on the add to calendar button as a user and maybe nothing's happening. I don't know if this could be a possibility, but you may have an ad blocker popping pop-ups. I don't know if that's something that's maybe affecting it. I know that for me, it downloads as a separate file. So you may want to check where your downloads go to find the calendar item, that ICS file.
And on some, you might not see it exactly download. If you're on a mobile device and you click on that, a lot of times it will just add it to your calendar. You might see a quick little pop up that says added to calendar or something like that. So if you're on a tablet or an iPhone or an Android phone, it may already be on your calendar. You might just want to go check your calendar to see that it was added. So only on like laptops and desktop computers, you might see the little downloading option. On several more modern mobile devices, it will just click and it'll be on your calendar, or it will click and it'll say confirm add to calendar. And then even on some laptops and desktops, if you're using certain browsers, I think Microsoft Edge off the top of my head, I think is one of them, where if you click and it sees an ICS file, a calendar file being added, it'll just try to add it to whatever your default calendar is. So um, In some cases, your default calendar settings might be getting in the way. So you might want to go check your device settings and see what your calendar default is. So if you normally use, for as an example for me, I use Outlook as my calendar on this computer, but by default, Windows tries to use the Windows calendar. So if I were to use a browser that adds it to my default calendar, I might not notice that it exists because it might have been added to a calendar that I don't normally use, and you might just need to update those settings. Um, I will also jump. I did see a question a little bit earlier about the control panel notices. I'm on a demo website that is running on a different server so that we can demo these things. So my notices won't work when I say click here. If you notice that you say click here and you don't see any of the old notices, sometimes we do remove old notices if they no longer apply. So for things like downtime, when we're doing server upgrades or something like that, if we're doing server upgrades in 2 weeks, once those are in the past, it's no longer applicable that we have those notices, 3 months later. So I don't know if we have any old notices at the moment. I'd have to go check later. But we usually keep the notices around for a while. Um, so you should be able to see the click here. I'll go check on our deployment site and make sure that there's not something wrong with that. So thank you for letting me know that you're not seeing things when you click here. I'll make sure that if it's not working, that we fix it, and if it is working, that we make sure that it is read correctly. I think that's most of our pressing questions. Uh, all right. I want to thank you all so much for attending. We appreciate everyone so much. We know that, especially when it comes to events, that is the kind of like lifeblood of a lot of our clubs and a lot of our organizations. So it's very near and dear to you. We always appreciate, your input on these things, and you know, we as you kind of get to know the new updated events, let us know what you do and don't like, and we can continue to improve events going into the future. This is our first deployment of this new style of events, so keep in mind that it might not be perfect for everyone's use case, but we will always be making these adjustments to try to make it as smooth as a use for everyone involved. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you in our next webinar, and we'll see you in our newsletters, and we'll see you around.